Somewhere around 20 years ago, Ford was doing a lot of weird stuff. They had acquired companies like Jaguar, Land Rover, Mazda, and even Volvo. Also around 20 years ago is when sedans started to die and SUVs started to take over. If you look up what else happens in 20 years, that's about the time that trends come back around, which has me wondering, are sedans making a comeback?
Today we're going to check out the most successful large sedan that was ever put on the car market, as well as the biggest failure in the entire big sedan lineup. Hello everybody and welcome to Performance on Wheels. My name is Austin, my dad Todd and I, we make all types of different car videos on all types of different cars. You know, you guys have really been enjoying our older car review series recently. However, 97% of you have yet to hit that subscribe button. So please support this father-son team and hit that subscribe button.
In the early 2000s, a Ford Taurus sold a few 100,000 every year. Enter the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, Ford was desperate to keep the sedan alive. They were only selling 30, 40,000 units every year, so they had to spice things up. Out went the Taurus, and in entered the Ford 500, a sedan that took a heritage name, the 500, from all the top-tier Ford products of the past, the Fairlane and the Galaxy 500.
Ford planned on just over 200,000 units for the original production year of 2004 for the Ford 500. However, they came in a little bit short at 14,000 units. An absolute flop right out of the gate. The following year, they did just over 100,000. Then the following year after that, about 80,000, and Ford just had to pull the plug. The thing was an absolute failure. Unlike the Toyota Avalon that we're standing in front of right now.
The Avalon? You mean the Avalon that was named after the mythical island where King Arthur went to heal after his battles, which in some manner expressed sophistication and luxury?
Yeah, that Avalon. Today, I wanted to do a in-depth review and cross-shop the two of these cars on the used market because both of them are right around $6,000 on the used car market. So let's see what the differences between these two cars are, which one you should pursue, and which one is the ultimate daily driver for around $6 grand. I think it's only fitting that we start this review talking about the interiors of both of these cars because that's what was appealing about a big old sedan, right? Luxury. The comfort, the luxury, the legroom, the front and the back. Let's start off in the Ford 500.
A lot of people don't know this car exists. Checking out the luxury in here, I was actually kind of surprised. I'm not going to lie. I got in here, I sat in here, and back 5-10 years ago, I would have looked at this and said, this is crap. But I get in here and look at it now, and especially compared to just the look of the Avalon, it looks really nice in here. The wood grain doesn't look too cheap, only just kind of cheap, and the plastic just blends in with the leather nicely. It's actually nicer than I expected it to feel.
I have to 100% agree with you. It's way nicer in here than I would have thought, and I think there's a reason behind that. This Ford 500 is actually based on Ford's D3 platform, which is based off of Volvo's P2 architecture, which was shared with the S80 as well as the XC90. They're two big luxury cars. So it's not all Ford in here. There's a bit of Volvo that's tied into it, and they kind of tag team the build and partnership while building this car, and I totally see it in here. You get into other Fords of this generation, and they feel like crap. But this one actually feels really nice. I got to agree that wood, it doesn't look all that fake. It looks pretty nice. I like how the dash is actually soft touch. It's not rock hard plastic. In reality, this is a really nice interior for the car that this is, and it's comfortable. These seats are plush, they're big. You can't have a big, fancy, luxurious sedan without putting a big old clock right in the center of the dashboard.
They nailed that, and you said big a few times, and the Ford 500 is big, especially compared to the Avalon, which is hard to believe, not only in exterior dimensions, but also interior dimensions. There's over a cubic foot more of passenger volume in the Ford 500 that's felt in the height, your headroom. You have very similar legroom up front. You have a little more legroom in the back. The car is about 2 inches wider. The real kicker is when you get back to the trunk. There is a substantial difference in trunk volume compared to the Avalon and the Ford 500. There's almost 7 cubic feet more cargo room in the trunk compared to the Avalon.
Brief overview of the backseat of the Ford 500. Lots of legroom for both a 5'11" and 6 foot tall adult back here. However, these seats are hard as a rock. Holy cow.
Stiff.
I could sit back here for a decent chunk of time. I got rear climate. I got some vents back there. I have some speakers on each one of our door cards. But man, these seats are just hard as a rock.
Yeah, it's still impressive though, because you have to remember the length of this car is the same length as a current day full-size SUV, essentially. This front seat is almost all the way back. I can sit in this front seat with my legs, being 6 feet tall, 100% stretched forward, and I'm still comfortable in the back seat. A couple things jump out to me in the Avalon right away. The seats have a little bit more plushness to them. They're a little bit softer. And then when you get in here, I mentioned not liking all the hidden tray areas that the Avalon has, but what I do like is kind of, it actually, you don't say this about a Toyota too often, but the technology feels more advanced because you have your entire instrument cluster that is blackened out and comes to life when you turn the key on, showing you the exposed needles and lit up gauges, and your climate control that has a nice digital screen.
I like how in the Avalon the wood wraps around to the doors. It makes the doors feel a little bit higher quality than they did in the 500, and the way that they did this swooping dash makes it feel like it's roomier in the Avalon in the front seat, even if it's not. It's a nice spot to be in here. I should mention the Avalon definitely wins when it comes to a storage setting. Way more spot to put things inside of the Avalon here, and you can also make it look a bit smoother with those plastic cubbies covering everything. However, I think the interior of the 500 feels a little bit higher quality other than the door panels, but let's hop in the back quick. The Avalon's back seat is significantly more plush than the Ford 500, but one thing I forgot to mention when you're sitting up front and you really notice it in back, the Avalon's headroom is significantly worse than the 500s. Like the 500s, I feel like I've got headroom for days, but in the Avalon at the lowest seat setting in the front, I still feel like my head's reasonably close to the roof. And in the back, my hair is touching at 5'11". The roof is significantly lower in the Avalon. I do like how the wood carries onto the back door. And I also just feel like the back feels bigger in the Avalon. Just another thing, it's just so interesting to me that the 500 is bigger, but the Avalon still feels bigger. I have more legroom, I feel like, and I even have reclining rear seats. You can totally lay down in the back of the Avalon. This is really comfortable.
And when you talk about the lack of headroom, you can definitely see it in the exterior design differences between the Avalon and the Ford 500. The Avalon has a much more sloping or sleek design to it with that C-pillar that has no window there compared to the Ford 500. But you can see that the hood slopes more, the roof slopes more. It is a much more sleek design that carries into the interior design on the Avalon, where everything is more pronounced up and down or boxy on the Ford 500.
And if you guys are interested in this Ford 500, be sure to check out Apple Autos here in Apple Valley, Minnesota. There's a link down in the description below. Now, I should also disclose, this is actually my personal Toyota Avalon. There's an additional video on the channel if you want to check it out up in the corner of our full review on this thing. This video is not biased at all. There's some things I really don't like about this car. We're going to share those and get into them. But the real question is which one should you buy over the other one? But let's talk about looks now, because this is one of the things that I hate about the Avalon. I hate to talk negatively. I hate to talk poorly. I do not like the look of the Avalon. I just don't.
Yeah, it's grown on me a little bit. It's fugly. The proportions are weird. It's like stretched, but it wasn't meant to be stretched.
This area just looks so unbelievably awkwardly long to me. The front end I've never thought has looked appealing. I'm not saying it's a bad car, and I'm not saying it's ugly to everyone. Just in my opinion, I've never liked the way it looked. However, the 500 over here, it looks proportionately great. It's a really good looking car. Every part and every angle on it, I actually think looks really, really nice. I think we both agree that the 500 wins for the interior, the 500 wins for the exterior. Now let's talk about powertrain, because I think this is where we really put our foot down and figure out which one of these two cars we're gonna buy. Now, if you notice these two sitting next to each other, check out that ride height difference. A big part of that is because the 500 you could get in all-wheel drive. However, I highly recommend not pursuing an all-wheel drive one, because with the all-wheel drive, it only came with a ZF CVT transmission, which has the unfortunate side effect of spontaneously exploding, unlike the 2GR FE and the 5-speed transmission that it's hooked up to.
Yeah, it's a good talking point. Both are V6s, but they are radically different in their performance and feel. So the Ford 500, it has a measly, in the little 3-liter, 200 horsepower, and there's like nothing there. You go over to the Avalon, and you get about 60 more horsepower, which this is dramatically felt. It feels like, if I were to like give just an exaggerated example, the Avalon feels like it has 120 more horsepower compared to the way the Ford 500 feels. The power delivery is smooth, it's responsive. There's even a little bit of sportiness to the way the Avalon feels when you're driving it compared to the Boat that is slow as can be. I mean, we're talking mid 7-second 0 to 60 times. There's e-bikes now that are faster than this thing accelerating. There's just not much much there. But at the end of the day, you're buying this vehicle for a comfortable, reliable daily driver. So either one at the end of the day will do that. However, the Avalon is light years ahead of what the Ford does from a powertrain standpoint.
The Avalon can do a 0 to 60 time of almost 2 seconds faster than the Ford 500, which is unbelievable. And while doing so, it's more reliable too. But it's actually relatively close. This V6 is very reliable. It's a pretty robust engine. They're not really known for a whole lot. And in reality, I'm going to be completely honest here, I would rather work on the 500's engine than I would on the Avalons. The Avalons is big and it's stuffed in there. You're talking about the V6, of course, that's front wheel drive based. So both of these vehicles are flipped, right?
Yep.
So the engines are in there sideways. The Avalon has absolutely zero room between the frame rail and the side of the engine. You get a few inches over here on the Ford, which that's everything when it comes to working on it. But not only that, but just the amount of space that's actually in front of the cowl of the windshield is also a big deal on here, because the Avalon's is still like slightly under that cowl.
Yeah.
So it is a nightmare to work on the Avalon, and it looks a bit easier to work on the Ford 500.
And there's people in the comments right now saying that Ford holds nothing, does not hold a candle to the reliability of the Toyota. And I think we both totally agree with that. But here's just a comparison to bring some context to it. An Avalon has a really good chance of going 300,000 to 400,000 miles with minimal issue. The Ford 500 has a really good chance of going 200,000 to 250,000 miles with an issue with the CVT, if you have that one, or the air compressor for the air conditioning is a big fail point on them for whatever. So you're still reliably getting 200,000 to 250,000 miles is what a lot of owners have stated out of the 500. You might get 300,000 or 400,000. A lot of people aren't going to keep these cars that long. Like, for example, you're going to find a lot of them with 100,000 miles. You'll rock them for another 100,000 miles and on to the next one. At least that's where my mindset is.
I was thoroughly impressed with the Ford 500. However, I would highly recommend not going with an all-wheel drive one, but I think the front-wheel drive one is honestly really impressive to me. I think it's a great car around the $6,000 mark that's going to run a really long time. I was super impressed about the build quality on the interior in this car, and I do think it's pretty decent looking on the outside as well. It's a car that'll get you from point A to point B with absolutely zero excitement or thrills involved, and it's really quite as simple as that. However, it's just hard to recommend this car when this one exists at a similar price point, because it's honestly more reliable. Like, I'm not trying to down talk it, but that is proven on all the forums that they run longer.
Yep.
It truly is. I think the interior might not be as good, but it works just fine. And not only that, but you can get a higher trim than this one, which also bumps you up to getting some cooled seats. It gives you a few other cool options that you can't get over here.
Before we wrap the video up, we do need to comment on something that's kind of a big deal when it comes to the Ford 500. It was only produced for a few years. And when it was done being produced, they took the exact same car and they stuck a Taurus badge on it. So the Taurus went away, the Ford 500 came in as a rebranding game, and then they said, no, we need a name that everyone knows and trusts. So back to the Taurus. Goodbye Ford 500, hello Ford Taurus. So you can get the exact same car known as the Ford Taurus for a handful of years.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video here on Performance on Wheels. Let us know your thoughts on these old car reviews down in the comments below, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.